Hi, and welcome to this installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. If you have not seen this show before, my name is Art Bergeron. My day job is as an elder law attorney at Myrick O'Connell. There are actually 20 of us here in Westboro at our office. But this is not about my day job. It is about my friends Frank and Mary. If you've seen my presentations at the local senior centers or on the cable station, you know Frank and Mary's goal is very simple. They want to live in their house until they die and be buried in the backyard. And if that's Westboro, that means they want to stay right here. So the point of this show is to help you, if you can identify with Frank and Mary, know what is going on in Westboro, how your lives may be changing, and how you can participate in those changes, whether because you like them or because you don't like them. And my co-host is Shelby Marshall, who always finds these great guests to help us do that. And she's got some great folks today, one of whom we have seen before, and a new mystery guest. So Shelby, whom do we have today, and what are we going to talk about?
Great to see you as always, Arthur. Welcome to our viewers. Appreciate you tuning in for another episode. So very excited to have our town planner, Jim Robbins, back. He's been on a guest on Frank and Mary before, so welcome, Jim. And
thank you.
Thrilled that he's accompanied by Mark Silverberg, the longtime member of the planning board and the current chair. So Mark, welcome.
Thanks, Shelby. Thanks, Arthur.
So I asked Jim and Mark to be our guest today because we have a town meeting coming up shortly here in March, and there are a number of planning board articles that are on the warrant. Some are pretty kind of, I'll call them straightforward. Those are my own views on them. So we'll kind of, Mark and Jim will talk through those quickly. But there are others that may have more heightened interest. And I think it's important that our viewers have a chance to kind of hear in this casual conversation what they're about. So when they go to town meeting, super important that they're informed. So I'm going to turn it over to Jim and Mark and let you take it away.
Thank you very much, Shelby. If you don't mind, what I would like to do is have Mark introduce a couple of the articles that the planning board has and cover them, specifically the master plan implementation article and the M1 article that allows cemeteries and recreational uses by right. And then we can spend some time on the more technical articles regarding digital billboards and the new industrial overlay district.
So like you said, Shelby, there's some articles I think are pretty simple and straightforward. And the first one of those is the M1 zoning change that allows outdoor recreational use and cemetery use in an M1 zone. And for those of you that don't know, M zoning refers to state-owned land and M1 zoning refers to town-owned land. And currently, the town does not allow for outdoor recreational use in either of those zones, which may strike you as strange since we have a ton of outdoor recreational uses in those zones. But there is a use table in the zoning, and in that use table it says no, those are not allowed. And so things like the pickleball court, even the soccer fields at the state hospital, all of those would have to go to ZBA for a special permit. And we thought that was kind of a cumbersome process. And so we are asking the town to allow outdoor recreational uses in those zones by right. While we were looking at that, we realized that cemeteries are not allowed in those zones, which there's a couple of cemeteries already in those zones. And the town is building a new cemetery on Nurse Street. So it didn't make a lot of sense to us either. So we've combined those requests into one article.
So certainly a bit more than cleaning up tables. We've seen some administrative fixes in the past, but largely sort of, I mean, it's sort of like an obvious change. I mean, this one to me is a bit of a no-brainer and really makes the process much smoother.
And what's the article? And what's that article number, by the way?
I don't have the warrant open.
Okay.
Jim, do you have it?
Yeah. I believe it's 28. I don't have my warrant open either, but I believe it's 28.
So there's two additional M1 changes, and those have to do with the water towers. One is on Fay Mountain, and the other one is up
Ruggles Street.
Ruggles Street. Yes, sorry. And those are really driven by DPW. DPW wants to put, I believe it's a filtration system.
Chlorination system, I think.
Chlorination, I'm sorry, on both of those sites. And that's something they need to do per state, per an agreement with the state. Anytime a structure is built on M1 zones, we have to go to town meeting to establish dimensional regulations. And both of those articles are purely intended to establish the dimensional regulations so that DPW can put those, it's relatively small structures. They're like probably similar to the well houses that you see around town. The only confusing thing about this article might be that there's height and setback restrictions, and those are pretty broad. There's no intention to, for example, the height restriction says 35 feet, right? There's no intention to put up a 35-foot structure, and the setback says 0 setback. There's no intention to go up to the lot lines. But the way the bylaws are written, in order to do any work on that site, we have to establish dimensional regulations for the actual work. So if we had really strict dimensional regulations, they wouldn't be able to put use a backhoe, for example, or use they would have to be really limited in their workspace. So those dimensional regulations are pretty broad, only so that they can work within the entire confines of the site. Really, the only intention is to put up a very small building. There'll be a picture of that,
Yes.
and size at town meeting. We don't have those with us, but again, I don't think this one's really a complicated article, and hopefully not controversial.
Yeah. So those two articles are Articles 30 and 31 that with respect to the water tanks, and our DPW director, like you said, Mark, will probably give some photos of that. And the idea there is that there have been efforts to maintain the water as it needs to be maintained safely, but to your point, the state, and I don't want to imply that it's not safe water, but whatever the standards are that they have to maintain, the fixes that have been put in place have not been sustainable. So these chlorination setups have to be done. They have to be enclosed. They have to be safe. So hence the two articles. And then Article 32 is the one about the cemetery and open space. So
that's the right number. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
Do you have the article number then for the master plan implementation request?
I do. Why do you start talking about that one?
Yeah. So I hope this one's already also not very controversial. Most people watching are probably aware, because you're interested in town government, that the past 2 years the town has spent developing a
correction. It's because we're the coolest show around. That's why they watch.
It's the coolest show. It's with the most attractive hosts.
Right. Of course.
So the master plan that the town developed and approved recently established short-term and long-term goals for the town. But now we have to figure out how to implement those. And the planning board is forming an implementation committee, but we're looking for funding to hire a consultant for the first year to help us with that implementation process, to kind of guide us through how to take the goals that we set, and not just we at the planning board, but the town. There was a significant amount of public input in this, in the creation of the master plan, how to take those goals and actually turn them into actions and changes that will see those goals come to fruition. So I hope it's a worthwhile expenditure for the for town meeting. I think it is. I think we really need some guidance on that.
Yeah, so that's Article 12, and it's a free cash transfer of $16,000 is how the warrant is. So the article's written in the warrant. So that would be number 12.
Right. Okay. So then we maybe get to some of the more complex articles. We have a zoning change regarding electronic billboards and signs, and Jim Robbins will spend some time on that one. And then we also have we're proposing a new overlay in one of the industrial zones. Jim can explain that in more detail. So I'm going to turn this over to Jim for those two articles and chime in when I can.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you. That was a good explanation of those other articles. Shelby, if it's okay with you and Arthur, I'd like to proceed to the industrial overlay district. And I have a couple slides I'll show you. I'll begin by sharing my screen. And while I'm sharing my screen, I'll explain to you the article. So the planning board, as you know, had placed a couple warrant articles on the last town meeting agenda. We came back to town meeting and we said that at town meeting, we said we really felt that these articles required a little bit more study. And while doing that study, we found that we really wanted to, can you see my screen now?
I was just going to say, we can't see that share just yet, Jim. Why don't you go ahead and share that? And we'll just pause for a second here. Make sure that's up for the viewers.
Okay, thanks again. And what I'm showing you right now is a slide that will be shown at our town meeting to our voters and explaining what our new industrial E district is. So we're proposing a new industrial district on the western side of town, which would be along Otis Street, Secaucus Drive, Valenti Drive on Boston Hill, and one parcel on Smith Valve Parkway. It would be an overlay district, which would keep the uses that are currently allowed in the industrial district. We call it Industrial B. They would remain in place. The new zoning district, the Industrial E, would have the same uses allowed by right. We would allow up to 5 stories in height. Currently 4 stories are allowed by right. So 5 stories would be allowed by right. And we would require a minimum of 50% open space. Currently 60% is required. And the site plan review would be conducted by the planning board. So site plan review would be required. I'm going to show you now where the district is. I'm going to stop sharing this particular slide. Okay, I'm ready to start again. So what I'm showing you right now is the map that will again be shown at town meeting that outlines the district. The properties that are in purple are currently in our Industrial B district. The new overlay district are those with purple and a yellow crosshatch. So we're talking about Smith Parkway down here at the bottom, Smith Valve Parkway, and number 10, Smith Valve Parkway, which is currently occupied by Columbia Tech. And it runs right along the back of the rail line. You'll see the rail line here where my cursor is, which comes along Fisher Street and Smith Valve Parkway. Then on the other side of the railroad to the north, the properties along Otis Street. All that are currently zoned industrial would include this overlay, and the 2 parcels on Secaucus Drive where Coca-Cola currently exists, as well as the other properties that are on the west side of Otis Street, where Amazon Robotics is, and the new proposed microbrew and an additional Amazon fulfillment center are here. Then we go onto Valenti Drive, which is accessed off of Route 9 and Route 20 in Northborough. So even though the access from Route 20 is in Northborough, the road at the top of the hill, Valenti Drive, is in Westborough. And currently this area in purple is where the YMCA is. So we're not overlaying the YMCA property, but the other 3 parcels that are currently vacant at the top of the hill would be included in this district. The advantages to this overlay is we know that modern industry today has asked for additional floor area, whether it's vertical or horizontal on the site. So we propose to increase the building height by 1 story and allow an additional 10% coverage on the property from what now is a required 60% open space and 40% open space. We would increase the coverage allowance to 50% and still require 50% open space. We believe that this will give us a competitive advantage, meaning Westboro, competitive advantage compared to some of our neighbors in our industrial districts, and give us an advantage in a business attraction. The other thing that's good about these locations is they're within a quick walk to the MBTA station. The MBTA station is right here. It's labeled M1. We just talked about state and municipal properties. So anyone that's working along here on Otis Street could actually walk to the train station. It's less than a half a mile from the furthest point along Otis Street to the train station. Obviously, anything on Valenti Drive would require vehicle access, but that is very attractive for the Amazon workers and the researchers that are at the new Amazon facilities, as well as the techs and the R&D employees at Columbia Tech on these two parcels and the one parcel at 10 Smithville Parkway. So we believe that this article is positive for the community. It will increase the value of these properties, which ultimately means more tax revenue to the town and provides us with a competitive advantage with our neighbors. So that's the basis for the new industrial E proposal.
Jim, can you speak to, just for clarification, so open space is defined by anything that's sort of green and not touched. So parking lots would count as coverage toward that new proposed 50%.
That's correct.
Okay. And can you also speak to the sustainability component that is part of this that the planning board is encouraging?
Yes, at town meeting, I have a whole slide regarding sustainability. And as a matter of fact, I could probably pull that up if you can bear with me here for a moment. Okay, so again, we had talked about some of the provisions that are required to get the bonus because the additional 5 stories and the additional 10% coverage are requirements of the overlay only. In order to take advantage of the by right zoning, any new developer would need to provide opportunities for walking and bicycling, incorporate best practices in energy efficient design, including environmental protection and stormwater management, and leadership in energy and environmental design. We call that LEED. Also, low impact development techniques wherever possible. And low impact development techniques means using landscaping that's drought tolerant, that doesn't require a lot of water, using native landscape species that are non-invasive, and treating the landscape in the most sensitive manner to try and maintain mature vegetation. Also providing winding sidewalks so that we can be more creative in site design and assure that, excuse me, 1 second, assure that there's a mix of trees and shrubs and perennial annual flowers that are integrated on the site, provide for electric vehicle charging station, serving parking facilities, and that requirement will be at 5%, and assure that the project site design provides for photovoltaic energy generation readiness, solar energy. And if a property in the IE overlay district is within 300 feet of a residential use, any development of the industrial E parcels shall be required to screen residential abutters from any light and sound coming from the parcel in the new IE district. Such screening shall be achieved by eliminating lighting on the side of the building of the proposed development facing the abutting residential use and adding landscaping, fencing, and other visual or sound buffer materials.
So I think for our friends, Frank and Mary, what this means is, yes, you know, potentially you have the business has a potential to increase its height and or its coverage of the land, reducing that open space to 50%. But the trade-off is compliance in these areas, and that would all be governed and guided by site plan review.
Correct.
Shelby, can I make a couple of comments?
Yeah, please.
Yeah, so the planning board was, some people might be asking, why didn't we just change this in the entire industrial B? And the planning board wanted to be sensitive to the residential neighbors. If you notice, we didn't include lots that were at all close to residential neighborhoods, like down along Fisher Street where the solar farm is on Carlstrom press metal site. We didn't include any of that in this because we felt like a 5-story building in those areas might be, too much for the neighbors. But we also were concerned about the, reduction in open space, and the sustainable provisions in this were, intended to offset the impact of the open space reduction with environmentally friendly construction methods. And the other thing that we found when we were talking to landowners in this area, there's a lot of these sites are already built on, and they were, the feedback was, well, I can't really add a story to my building very easily, but if I want to expand my building, I need to have that reduced lot coverage provision. So, we felt like this would be a way to maybe keep some businesses in town that might consider moving because they were maxed out on their lot. And that was another consideration that we had. But mostly we were just trying to be cognizant of the fact that a lot of the tax burden in town has shifted from commercial to residential. And we think this will help generate some commercial tax revenue and industrial tax revenue in the long term. It's not going to have a significant impact overnight. It'll take a while.
Well, I think it makes Westboro attractive, as Jim had, identified, and I think it's a creative use of the land, which also aligns with the work of the Climate Action Plan and the Master Plan. So it's in an area that is already Zone Industrial B, and it creates some new opportunities for use of current parcels as well as new businesses that would be coming in on vacant. So it's great. Just in the interest of time, let's move on to the digital billboards, please. And by the way, while we're doing that, that was Article 33 on the town, for folks interested.
Yes, so thank you very much again. So we're going to move now to an article that we call off-premises signs, and particularly dealing with digital billboards. Again, at the last town meeting, the town meeting voters were asked to look at an article that would allow digital billboards along interstate highways that pass through Westboro, particularly Interstate 495 and the Massachusetts Turnpike, known as I-90. The article was asked to be referred back to the planning board for further study because we wanted to be sure that we understood how many billboards could possibly be constructed along Route 9 based upon setback and zoning criteria. So first of all, the whole intention of this article is to provide for new technologies in sign and advertising. And so, as you know, we have paper billboards along Route 9 in Westboro, and we have digital billboards. There's a movement in the advertising industry and in the technical industry to have billboards be electronic in nature. Now, this particular proposal does not deal with billboards on Route 9. So what I'm going to talk about doesn't affect the existing billboards unless a paper billboard wants to convert. And if that billboard was converted, it would have to remain in its current location, and it would have to remain in its current size. And if the billboard had only one side or only one face that currently had advertising, it would be restricted to only that one face. So this new bylaw does not create additional opportunities for more billboards on Route 9, nor does it increase the size or the height or the coverage of any of the billboards on Route 9 currently. This deals only with billboards on 495 and Interstate 90, the Massachusetts Turnpike. So the graphic that I have up in front of you was a study that was completed by our zoning review committee. And we looked at what might be separation between billboards along 495 and Route 9. And down in the lower right-hand corner, I don't know if you can see my cursor, but I'm pointing to an existing billboard that's on the Cumberland Farms property. Here's the Cumberland Farms property on Flanders Road. And currently they have a digital billboard that faces the Massachusetts Turnpike. So we would use that billboard as a control from which other setbacks would be created for additional billboards. And we looked at originally 1,000 feet, and we found that that would create what we felt were way too many opportunities for additional billboards. So we went to 1,250 feet. That's 1,250 foot buffer between billboards. And you'll see that there's an orange circle around each one of these blue dots. The blue dots represents a sign on a particular property. The orange circle is 1,250 foot radius from the center where the sign would be. The blue circle is a 500 foot radius to serve as a buffer for residential properties. So if any residential property is within the circle, that would eliminate a location. So after placing dots every 1,250 feet and putting on the 1,250 foot circle and the 500 circle, it significantly narrowed the potential for additional signs. Again, using the sign that exists on the Mass Pike currently at Cumberland Farms, we measured 1,250 feet down the Massachusetts Turnpike and were able to start the first additional sign. But because of the 1,250 foot separation from any other new signs, we then found where the next logical location could be. And I say could be because who knows that the next sign will start down here at the bottom on 495. It could start somewhere else, because these are all of these properties that are highlighted in yellow are properties that directly abut either 495 or the Massachusetts Turnpike. The bylaw only relates to properties that directly abut the interstate highways. Additionally, the Massachusetts Turnpike Authority would have to license these billboards because they would abut their right-of-way. They have a requirement that says no billboard can be erected along an interchange. So you'll notice that there are no proposed billboards on either side of 495 at the interchange with 495 and Route 9. This is Route 9, if you can see my cursor, running east and west. And this is where it intersects at the intersection of 495. So these properties that touch the interchange could not have digital billboards on them because the Mass Turnpike Authority and Mass DOT consider digital billboards a possible distraction for someone making a turn or a merge onto or off of the interstate highway. Now, this map shows a maximum potential. It doesn't show a finite location for the billboards. It doesn't mean that these are the only locations. What it does mean is in order to obtain a 1,250 foot setback and 500 feet from a residential property, that there could be no more than an additional 3 billboards. Noting that, again, that there is a control, there's one that exists currently, and noting that the residential abutters would limit potential locations. There would be no locations on 495 on the east side of 495, which is 495 running north towards Marlborough. And that's because all of these properties to the east are all residential. So that would eliminate any billboards on that side of 495. So additional billboards could only be on the west side of 495, which is southbound traffic 495. Now, the reason that we think that permitting electronic billboards is a good thing for the town is the billboards that we have on Route 9 right now pay taxes, and they pay a fee to the town through the development agreement with the Board of Selectmen. The permitting for these billboards would have to go through a local process, which is a 2-step process, a permit from the Zoning Board of Appeals based upon the restrictions that I've mentioned, and a development agreement with the Select Board. Then the application would proceed to the state, to Mass DOT, for their review and approval. So it's not going to be an easy process, but the town currently receives taxes for each of the existing digital billboards, which is about $30,000 a year. I'm sorry, $60,000 a year, and an additional fee for each billboard at $10,000 per face. There are 3 faces along Route 9. So that gives us an additional $30,000. So approximately $100,000 the town receives currently in either fees or taxes.
And,
For
and
these,
oh, sorry, Jim, I just want to jump in and just say, kind of make this point, that some of those fees also directly support the economic development small business grants. So,
Correct.
you know, there's a certainly a focus and a priority of residents of increasing our small businesses, revitalizing the downtown, making it, you know, really enjoyable, you know, unique places. And you see those through local businesses. So this, what I like about it, there are some downsides to this, but what I like about it is that tax revenue certainly, as well as the funding of the small business grant revenue stream.
thank you. Yes, that's a very important point. Thank you for pointing that out. So the intention is to do the least amount of harm. People who have asked me about this, they're concerned about technology and what the billboards might advertise and where they might be located, and does this affect the aesthetic appeal of the community? One thing that we need to note is that there are restrictions on the content of information that can be advertised on these billboards. Public service announcements and benefits to the community would be given time on the billboards, as well as emergency requirements and emergency notices, such as Amber Alerts or any police requirements, either by state police or by local police, if they wanted to notify the general public or the traveling public of any concerns that they might have, any alerts or any other security issues. So the billboard's proposal is intended to benefit the community and the state in general. And I actually entertain questions now. I think that would be the best point to end the presentation.
Yeah. The only other point I'll make, and just to emphasize, Jim, is that that agreement then with the billboard companies, for example, we have Clear Channel currently on Route 9, would be written by the select board. So we have the opportunity to be explicit about the types of things. So, for example, we don't want a hate speech on a billboard, right? So that would be something that you know, we could specifically write into a contract or an agreement, just as an example. And obviously, the state has some oversight of ultimately what they're going to approve as well.
So Shelby, can I make just a couple of quick points? I know we're running out of time. So the planning board, you know, at least myself, and you know, we did support it. We felt there was, you know, several benefits to this, and I'm not a huge fan of billboards, but allowing conversion of existing billboards and the creation of some very limited number of new billboards along the highway would increase tax revenues. And people have to realize that the taxation on these is based upon the income. So an electronic billboard generates more income than just a regular paper sign billboard. So that automatically increases the value. And then when you have the ones along 495, or you know, the existing one on the Cumberland Farm site that overlooks the turnpike generates the most tax revenue because it generates the most income for the owner of the sign. So that those are, you know, pretty lucrative for the town. Then you get the added benefit of the contribution through the development agreement that you talked about that currently goes to the EDC grant program. That grant program I think ran out of funding. There were so many applications for it. And so we think that's a valuable benefit of this. And then there's the public service announcements like Amber Alerts and so on, advertising local events like Arts in Common, that we think are valuable to the town and from an information standpoint.
Yeah, so I think it's important for folks care about this. This is going to be, and I hope you do, this is actually Article 34 on the warrant as posted. Certainly bring your questions to town meeting. Take a look at the warrant. I know our town planner is available for questions as always before that meeting. And Arthur, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
And I was just going to say, so Shelby, could we just ask, Jim, could you just give folks your phone number and email again? And we'll also have that as a banner on the show so that if they want to reach out, that's one of the great points of this show is that it gives people ahead of time the ability to get questions answered that otherwise, it's the middle of town meeting and how does this work again? And that's the point, is to really help people, get clear on things before they even get to town meeting. So what's the best way to reach you?
So you can go on the town website and go to the planning board link on the page, and our office phone number, my direct line, as well as my email are obtainable at that location.
Okay, and we'll post
That's
that
great.
as well. Thank you.
Good. So thank you so much, Jim. Thank you very much, Mark. I think it's a lot. Zoning is a lot, but zoning is in many ways, as these folks have mentioned, what drives a lot of the revenue in the community, which is really all about your taxes. So don't get too bored about this stuff. This is about your pocketbook that they're really talking about here. So
That's right.
Shelby, thank you very much for getting these great guests. Mark, a pleasure to meet you.
Nice.
Jim, our ratings always go up when you're on our show. So we appreciate your coming on. And folks, get to town meeting. Once again, Shelby, the town meeting is when?
It's March 19th,
March 19th, starting at?
9 o'clock.
9 o'clock in the morning, a little bit earlier than normal.
So get to the town meeting. Now that you know what in the world is in these articles, go vote. However you want to vote, go vote.
And
Thank
don't
you
forget
all,
the
and we'll
town
see-
election's coming up too. So
Go vote again. Go, and we'll see you on the next installment of Frank and Mary here in Westboro. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.